Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Lawrence Bryant, and I'd like to welcome you to our workshop series. And I tell you, today is going to be a day that you will never forget. We've got a phenomenal presenter today for you, Dr. Marissa Prather, who I tell you is doing some work that is absolutely trendsetting. The title of her presentation, Join the Revolution, the Fourth Industrial Revolution and Education, How Technology is Changing the Way We Learn. And I tell you, Dr. Prather has such a plethora of experiences that really sort of back what she'll be talking about today. She's been an educator for over 21 years. That's a long time. She's been a director of professional learning and lifelong learning education. She's been a teacher. She's been a principal. She's been a director of many things. And she also has two books that's been published as well. And so I tell you, we are getting ready for a treat. But just to sort of contextualize this a little bit, when we're talking about joining the revolution and how we can utilize technology, or how youth can utilize technology to be more competitive. So she really wants to look at how we can help kids sort of filter out what's most important and what's most usable in terms of technology. So ultimately, they can be more competitive in the workforce. She really wants youth to be able to assess data and information so that they're able to think more critically about what it is that they're seeing, but also be able to internalize this such that it is more meaningful and produces better outcomes for these individuals. And I tell you, I've got my seatbelt buckled up. I'm ready to go. And so let's get this party started. Dr. Marissa Prather, come on down.
Thank you so much. And thank you for joining me today as we have this conversation about the fourth industrial revolution and how technology is changing the way that we learn. Fantastic. Welcome, and made me feel good about myself. So thank you for sharing that little bit of background. I am, again, Dr. Marissa Prather, and I am currently the Director of STEM and Fine Arts for my school district. I just want to put it out there before we get started. We cannot boil the ocean today. We have about 45 minutes of content, and then we're going to open the floor for those questions that you may have. So my goal today is to ignite your curiosity around the fourth industrial revolution, invite your attention to some of the new technology trends that are available, and then to create that awareness for you around the fourth industrial revolution, education, and industry. So again, if you leave here thinking, man, I wish I knew about, please reach out to me and I'll try to help and assist you with that, but we will not be able to boil the ocean today in 45 minutes. So let's start off, and I want you just to think and wonder. I just want you to take a moment and think about your physical environment. Perhaps think about your lunch break where you're sitting in your car and you're listening to satellite radio, or you have your iPhone out and you're reading an article on your mobile device. Or maybe you just have multiple tabs open on your computer and you're working cross-functionally with your Google Drive. All of these are evidence that we are in the middle of the fourth industrial revolution. That evidence is all around us, from even something that seems ordinary like FaceTime. Whereas when we were growing up back in the day, we watched the cartoon The Jetsons, and we could see them doing face-to-face video calls through their devices, and it seemed like it was far out of place. Now it is a reality. We are now living in a time where we operate in a space that is reliant on artificial technology, blockchain, big data, and the Internet of Things. So our task, our role, our job as educators is to figure out how do we empower the next generation of young people to succeed in this field of education, this field of work, this field of the world that has to respond to fourth industrial revolution principles. Every industry has been impacted by technology in the fourth industrial revolution. So during our time today, what I want to talk to you about are some actionable steps that we can take to join the revolution. Because right now, education hasn't picked up on and is not a part of that revolution. I invite you to question everything that I say. In your mind, if I say something and it just doesn't fit into your frame, great. I love a little bit of cognitive dissonance because that's where growth and development happens. But what I will ask is, as we go through, just be open. Just be open to the topics. Just be open to the discussion. But again, you have that right. And I want you to question everything that I say. So let's start off by just taking a look at what is the fourth industrial revolution. It is a world-changing, altering impact that has happened, and it requires us to change our mindset. This is from the World Economic Forum, and I'm going to read it to you. We are at the beginning of a revolution that is fundamentally changing the way we live, work, and relate to each other. What I also want you to know is this quote is from 2011. The fourth industrial revolution began in 2011. We are now in the year 2023. So let's think about that gap in time and what action steps we need to take. So looking at a real quick overview of the actual revolution. So you had the first industrial revolution, which was steam, which gave us the power to have that mechanized production. The second revolution was electricity, and that enabled us to have mass production of items. We rolled into the third industrial revolution, and then you have the advent and the onset of computing, information technology, and we began that first initial step with automated production. I want you to look at the years at the bottom. There's about an 86-year gap between the first and second, a 90-year gap between the second and third revolution. There's only about a 51-year gap between the third and fourth revolution. And the fourth revolution, what we are in now, is cognification. And what that is the fusing of digital, physical, and biological. And in order for our students to be successful, we have to move ourselves out of that third computing revolution and into the fourth. And this is what I mean by the stagnation of education as it relates to the revolutions. I am a lifelong public educator, and I will be doing this until I don't. And so this is not an indictment of education. It is simply to say we have to change, we have to act, we have to move. So again, if we're looking at the third industrial revolution, which began in the 60s, okay, with that automation, what came out of that, it was this big push for instructional technologies. School districts across the nation, we are focused on instructional technology. And while it was great, it was timely, it was necessary, it no longer holds true. The key indicators of instructional technology is teacher-centric instruction that is program heavy, and your students are consuming technology, okay? Then we rolled in, we started pushing forward. Okay, well, maybe we don't need to be so program heavy. Let's move forward into digital learning. It was a great step. It made it more student centric. The students began to be producers, and we started talking about, well, how do we get them to collaborate with technology? So again, when you're looking at your current state, is yours teacher-centric, or have you started dipping your toe into that student-centric approach? Where we should be by the fourth industrial revolution standards is DTT, digital transformational technology. And this simply means we take that technology, but we are asking our students to use it to transform learning. When you're looking at that SAMR model of how you're integrating technology, it's that redefinition. Students are no longer passive consumers. They're using technology to again, analyze information and to do it quickly, to identify the validity of that information, but then also they're using it to produce. And in that production cycle, there's collaboration, there's clear communication, and then there is innovation through the form of creativity, DTT. That is where we should be heading in education, and there's where we must be in order for our students to keep pace. I want to talk to you about 3 huge mega trends as it relates to the fourth industrial revolution. And those mega trends are physical, digital, and biological. So let's start with physical. We all know about autonomous cars, 3D printing, advanced robotics, and then new materials. But what does that mean in terms of student learning and preparing students? One phrase that comes to mind that we should constantly go back to is think global, act local. How are we allowing our students to look at global issues, identification of a global issues, and then act upon those locally? How are our students using or experiencing metaverse? I'll give you an example. There are tables called anatomage tables. These tables are now being used in medical schools. So the medical students are no longer spending all of their time with cadavers. They're doing these things virtually. It's because now surgeons are able to practice procedures in this metaverse, this digital environment, before they actually lay hands on a human being. Those tables are available for schools. When we look at things like prism glasses, where students are able to have a 3-dimensional experience with math, to rotate, to manipulate, to take things apart and put them back together, that's that physical environment. There was this massive push to buy 3D printers. What are you producing with those printers, and how is it connected with instruction? The next big area that's a mega trend for the fourth industrial revolution is digital. And one of the biggest pieces of this new digital environment is the Internet of Things. I want you to think about the thermostat in your house. For me, I can control the temperature in my house from my cell phone. If Amazon pops by my house with a package, I can talk to that delivery driver through my phone. So when we're looking at the Internet of Things, we're talking about this network of physical objects that allow us to connect with each other, that allows for the exchange of information. Another major component in this digital environment is blockchain. And our students need to understand blockchain because it allows for transparency of information. Once you put it on the internet, it lives forever. And our students do not understand this concept. But with blockchain, it's that sharing of information, but it's also where if you are buying cryptocurrency, the back end of I am able to see exactly what you're doing and how you're moving that cryptocurrency. And when we're relating it to the real world, we can also relate that to logistics. And so when we're having conversations about those future focus awareness conversations, the logistics of delivery of being able to track items in real time. Are students having those experiences in our school buildings? If not, they need to be, because now it's not you're going to call up an operator and say, hey, I'm looking for such and such. It is a digital platform where everything is being tracked and monitored through GPS and satellites. So those are the experiences our students should be having. And then on to the biological. Again, these 3 megatrends, the physical, digital, and biological, are the earmarkers of the fourth industrial revolution. But when we think about the biological aspect, it's the use of technology to improve the quality of life. If I, for instance, needed a hip replacement, and this is not far from the future, this can happen now. I can have stem cells from my body matched with a 3D printed version of my hip so that my body accepts it better. So that is what I mean by the biological. And now we can roll into things like the National Library of Medicine talks about the synthetic biology. And when we're looking at synthetic biology, that is the development of these engineered biological circuits for use in your body with various systems. Think nanotechnology. A lot of the movies that are out that people think are science fiction are now becoming science fact. They have developed nanotechnology that can help govern the growth and death of cells in organisms. What does that mean 20 years from now? What does that mean for a career path for our students, where you have this whole biological aspect to education that traditional educators like myself, that wasn't a part of my curriculum. That wasn't a part of my pedagogy, but it is now a part of the fourth industrial revolution. Therefore, it is a part of the life in which they will live. So how can we, in our traditional public school environments, our secondary ed environments, our private school environments, ensure that our students have a footprint in the digital, biological, and physical aspect of the fourth industrial revolution? This is a quote again from the Economic Forum. The velocity of disruption and the acceleration of innovation are hard to comprehend or anticipate. So again, if even comprehending what the future will be like, how do we serve, support, and educate students so that they are properly prepared for it? Well, we're going to get to that. But first, here are a couple barriers that we have to critically think through as the leaders in these institutions. One of the biggest impacts has been from digitization has been this me-centric society. And this impact, and I'm sure if you walk anywhere, you can walk to the mall, you can walk in any store, and the visual that you see here, you will see. And that is this emergence of this me-centric society that has access to all of the information in the palm of their hand. They literally walk around with knowledge in their hand, but that wealth of information has created a poverty of attention. And so for us, it is our responsibility to help them filter through and figure out, how do I process information quickly? How do I identify the authenticity of this information? And then how do I transform this information into something that is usable? And again, going back to the field of economics, then this is Nobel Prize winner in economics. This wealth of information has created a poverty of attention because they know all I have to do is Google it. Content is no longer king. It is the ability to use information that is king. It used to be in the past, the smartest person in the room was the leader in that room. Now that is not the case. Everyone has equal access to all of this information. It is who can filter through that information, determine authenticity, usability, and then create with that information. So for us, our challenge is, how do we create a firm foundation for our students in the field of education on shifting sand? We're not building on a slab. We're building on sand. So what I want to talk to you about next is, how do you create that firm foundation on shifting sand? The first big push, which has been buzzwords for a while, is 21st century learning in classrooms. We have to shift our mindsets. First of all, it should not be a lofty goal In all of these vision and mission statements, we are trying to ensure that we are chasing after 21st century classrooms. We are living in the 21st century. You have a classroom in this century, therefore it is a 21st century classroom. What we should be attending to is not the moniker of, oh, we have 21st century classrooms, but the characteristics and the outcomes of educating students for the 21st century, not just the buzzword of 21st century classrooms. So we have to start by changing the way we think. We have to start increasing those partnerships between our educational institutions and the real world. And what I mean by those partnerships is not the traditional partners in ed where I put my hand out and I ask you if you can make a donation, or I ask you if you can buy some cookies or some wrapping paper. These are true partnerships where we are learning from industry. Industry is actually having a benefit for education by saying, here are the trends, here are the changes, here are the things that we need for our students to be successful. And so those skills have to be real world. And we need to be going beyond job skills and focus on thinking skills. If we can produce students who are able to critically think, then they will automatically have the skills necessary to obtain a job. But if we continue along the path of the regurgitation army, what you'll have are this quandary of students who do not know how to think. And that is what industry and economics is telling us, is that yes, students are graduating, they're graduating with straight A's, they're going to secondary institutions, but they have not had experiences with the 4 C's. They have not had experiences of, here's a challenge, I'm not putting parameters, think your way out. The best way out is through. And so for us, we have to increase the cognitive demand that students are experiencing in classrooms and student ownership. And that comes with some quality professional learning, because for teachers, it takes training to move from that sage on the stage to the guide on the side. And that's truly what a teacher should be, that guide on the side, not the sage on the stage. Gone are the days of Aristotle where you stand in front of a lectern and you speak outward and everything is imbibed and taken in and treated as gospel. Those days are over. Those days are simply over. The cognitive demand must be on the students. They should be doing the thinking. They should have ownership in their learning. Students also need the technical skills that are necessary to navigate through life and work. Industry says to us oftentimes that the students don't come with basic skills. And for us, what they consider basic skills, we just learn as a byproduct of growing up in our time period. And so those technical skills of knowing how to address an envelope, how to write a letter, I mean, down to, okay, you have a flat tire. How do I navigate a situation where I may not be in agreement with someone? That is where the 4 C's come into place. And the 4 C's are communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. Our standards tell us what we teach. The 4 C's are how we teach those. And again, the Global Economic Forum, and I keep going back because our job is to prepare them for the world outside of us. So that is why I use a lot of references from the Global Economic Forum and industry. But they state that critical thinking and problem solving, as well as self-management, are the things that are needed and that business and industry are looking for. Resilience, stress tolerance, flexibility. So how are we taking all of those and making sure that our students have access to those? So when I say teach the right skills, these are the skills that I mean. Again, by 2025, and that is not a long time away, it's 2023, 85 million jobs will have been displaced. And that division of labor is shifting between humans and machines. And it goes back to that if I go to Walmart, I'm working at Walmart, that division of labor. Also, 97 million new roles will emerge, but those roles will emerge in those three mega trends that I spoke to you about: digital, biological, and physical. So there will be jobs to replace the 85 million jobs that have been displaced, but are we preparing our students for the challenge of those 97 million jobs? Are we preparing them to be able to occupy that space? So I've said a great deal. So what's next? Where do we go from here? We know that the fourth industrial revolution is here, it's in full swing, and it's going to have an economic impact, not only for our students as individuals, but also for our country. So what is next? And it takes action planning. And that key word is action. By rethinking and restructuring how we align our opportunities to meet the needs of the fourth industrial revolution, we will empower our students for the future. I am an idealist, but what I will say is I'm also a realist. This will take a tremendous amount of work because the people leading the charge, educators who are my age, some older, some younger, we didn't experience the world in this fashion. And so we can't go out to teachers and educators and professors and say, teach for the fourth industrial revolution when they may lack the understanding of what that truly means. So there are 10 steps that we can take to help prepare our students for the rise of AI. Because to put it, if you want to boil it down, the fourth industrial revolution, as it relates to preparing our students for the future, the rise of AI is going to be a huge factor in that life for them. So start by offering more STEM classes. And I want to define STEM. I know that there's the acronym science, technology, engineering, math, but moving beyond the acronym of STEM, STEM is standards plus, high quality, standards-based instruction delivered through the 4 C's. That does not require you to buy a kit. That does not require you to buy a program. I know that it is marketed that way. And STEM occurs in the mind, and it is complemented by the hands. We have gotten STEM a little off kilter. I'll speak from my frame of reference in public education, where people believe they have to go out and buy something in order to be providing STEM, and that is simply not true. When you see STEM, I want you to see standards plus, high quality, standards-based instruction delivered through the 4 C's. And again, it doesn't come in a kit. Another step that we must take is to make learning relevant to the real world. The easiest way to do that is to infuse industry. We have to have the conversations also of whose world, not ours, not from our seat of reference, their world. That is the real world. Gone are the days where we say, well, back in my day, okay, great, but we're not in your day. So when we're talking about making learning relevant, it has to be to the real world. And I love to use the saying, you can still make jelly. I grew up on a farm, and I grew up canning and pickling, the whole 9, pressure canning, water bathing on the stove. There is a process. That was my world. I still can now, but I do it with an electric canner. Okay, and it reduces the chances of botulism. It is much more effective and it's quicker. I still get the same outcome, jelly. So again, making it relevant to their real world. We must teach students about AI, and I'm also going to put in parentheses, and teachers. With the advent of features like ChatGPT, I've caught my own personal students, oh, I have to write a paper, I'm going to go to ChatGPT. Teachers are unaware of the indicators where you can pick out something that was not authentically written by a student, we still teach students about AI and how to use it responsibly. But by continuing to ignore it or not discussing it, what we're doing is we have a group of educators who are uninformed about something that students have seen on TikTok, and they're like, well, I learned about this on TikTok. Now I can write a paper. To say it loosely, write a paper. I can put in some prompts and it'll write a paper for me. We have to teach students about AI and how to use it responsibly. Highlight the benefits of AI. How can AI assist you? If we continue to have a generation overly reliant and lack the understanding of what the purpose of AI is for, we will continue to have that gap that widens, and that opportunity gap, the economic gap, will continue to widen because they don't understand AI. They know what it is. They know it makes my life quicker, easier, and faster, but they don't know how to actually utilize AI for the purposes of being in command of AI, not a slave to AI. Next, we have to teach students to pursue some non-traditional careers, because as I discussed earlier, 85 million jobs will be displaced by 2025. 97 million new jobs will be created based upon those megatrends. So again, we have to show students that there are other careers and other jobs outside of traditional career paths, and that those paths can lead them to a stable financial future. And that's where we're, again, pulling in business, pulling in industry. Encourage creative thinking. And again, the regurgitation, the skill and drill and kill, or the death by Chromebook. I'm going to put you on a program and you're just going to stay there and do more and more of the same thing. We have to encourage that creative thinking, because when they go out to the world of work, their employers are not going to tell them step 1 to step 10 and you do just these things. They have to be able to creatively think. Promoting critical thinking. Again, they should be problem solving in the classroom. And when we look at increasing rigor in a classroom, teachers have heard for years, increase the rigor, it promotes critical thinking. Have we defined what rigor truly means? And if you have not, then you should, because rigor relates to the complexity of the curriculum. Is there an emotional response? Is there a reason for me to engage in this lesson? Are you creating an emotional response for student? Provocativeness. Are you intentionally creating experiences where students will go through the process of cognitive dissonance, or go through the process of engaging in those critical conversations, that student discord, all of those things? And then the final piece of that rigor that must happen in the classroom is the removal of ambiguity. We know that visuals travel 30,000 times faster to the brain than words. We know that the brain stores information as visuals. So what type of visuals and icons are you overlaying in this challenging curriculum that is promoting creative and critical thinking for your students? Again, the absence of visuals and the over-reliance on words harks back to old school traditional teaching, but it does not promote the type of learning that we need in this day and age. Also, we have to teach students the power and the value of collaboration, and it has to be done with intentionality and with purpose. Simply saying, y'all get in a group together and work on this, that is not collaboration. That collaboration piece has to be taught. And we know that we have a me-centric generation. And so they work for likes. And so when you're working for likes, that is almost in opposition of collaboration. So we have to teach them how to appropriately collaborate. And our final two things, some action steps that we can take to improve outcomes for our students, is provide opportunities for students to use AI under the guidance of a teacher so that they can see they are a master and controller of this artificial intelligence and not beholden to that intelligence. That has to be in their mindset that this is a tool, this is a resource for me to use. This is not the be all end all. And lastly, which kind of has been a thread throughout this presentation, is prepare students for the job market. Prepare students for the job market. And so the isolation of education from industry has to go away. When we're talking about partners in education, they have to be true partners so that they can keep us abreast and apprised of changes and trends that are impacting their field. So how do we do that? If I'm starting on this journey, how do I even take those first initial steps to move forward in that direction? I like to use the acronym GROW. And this is a strategic planning acronym and process that allows you to look at the totality of a situation and identify what is your strategy. And strategy, again, is that series of aligned steps and actions that are necessary in order to achieve your desired result. So what does GROW mean? First, identify your goal. What are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? And let's start with those. Okay, I've identified my long-term goals. Then let me go back and make some short-term goals that are actionable and doable. Once you have identified those goals, is having that conversation and benchmarking your goals against your current reality. And if you know that based upon the current reality of your situation, of your school, of your institution, of your organization, those goals are not attainable in that time frame, you need to reframe your goals. So always benchmark those goals against the actual reality of your situation. Next, after you have clear goals that are matched with the reality of your situation, what options and opportunities are available for you? What resources do you have? What network resources do you have? What connections do you have? What access to information, people, or resources are available to you to help you achieve the goals that have been benchmarked against your reality? And finally, what will you do? What do you have the capacity to do? How are you leveraging your people to ensure that you achieve those goals? It's that will. This is the fidelity of implementation. How will you be assessing? How will you measure? What will you actually do to obtain these goals in the time frame that you have allotted? And so as I get ready to close out and open it up for some questions and discussions, when we are looking at our schools, when we're looking at our classrooms, they truly are ecosystems. A classroom is an ecosystem, much like a natural ecosystem that defines the world around us. And the survival of any ecosystem depends on the constant transfer of energy between organisms. And when we're talking about that transfer of energy, that is from leader to teacher. Okay, that is from teacher to student, that is from industry to school. How are we using the transfer of energy to ensure that our students are able to obtain the successful outcomes that we know they need to have based upon those three megatrends: physical, digital, and biological? And so now I would like to open it up for questions and discussions if you have any.
Fantastic. I want everyone who's in the sound of our voice to just give Dr. Prather a resounding virtual hand clap. Yes, thank you, thank you. That was absolutely very, very powerful. And while you all are getting together your questions, because again, this is an interactive session, and just as important as Dr. Prather was describing, your input, your contribution is just as important to the overall conversation. But she really highlighted some very, very salient and important points. One that really stood out for me, making sure that our students have a firm foundation, exceedingly important. And, following that with changing the way that they think. So sort of the traditional ways of thinking have got to be changed so that we're thinking more critical. And also looking at cognitive demands of students. So these are all just areas that just really, really stood out for me. And the 4 C's is something that I'm taking back with me and incorporating into my own lifelong learning, because you talked about how important lifelong learning is, not just for our students, but also for ourselves. And we sort of harken back to cultural humility and what that means. And that is constantly challenging myself, constantly looking at ways that I can be better, constantly looking at ways where I can be more effective and have greater outcomes with my students. And so I am just as much a part of the learning process as our students. And I thought about this, my doctorate is in adult education and lifelong learning. And so it's in our DNA, it's in our blood that we are continuously honing our own skills. But the 4 C's, communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity, absolutely phenomenal. And I think we may have a question in the chat. I see something in the chat. So let's go to our chat and see. So Tamika says, can you say the 4 C's again? I was trying to write them down. So, can we maybe just explain just a little bit more on the 4 C's?
Yes, and also on the screen, the QR code on the left is a link to the entire presentation. So please feel free. And my email address is also at the bottom. I'm more than happy to send you anything. But the 4 C's are communication, and it has to be authentic, guided communication so that there is a purpose for that conversation. Collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. Oftentimes, when I talk to teachers about the creative aspect, I switch it up and I say, okay, it flows better because it's a C, but I want you to think about, are you providing instruction that causes your students to innovate their own thinking? So when you're thinking about the creativity piece, am I providing instruction that innovates my own thinking? And I have 8 children. And so when I think about the communication piece, we also have to make sure that our students know when and how to code switch. There's appropriate language for certain situations. And because now they mainly text, students have created their own sort of language, but we have to make sure that they understand that that is not appropriate academic or workplace language. And we have to be unafraid to say that. My daughter sent me a text and it had ION. I don't want to do something. And my response was, I do not understand what you have written to me. Please try again. Those same types of things have to happen in our school. I work a lot with industry because this is a passion for me to ensure that our students are capable and competent and ready to go. And that is what I hear all of the time, is the use of colloquial language or them not being able to hold an adult conversation. And that communication piece is teaching them about eye contact, sitting up straight, and the psychology behind using slant and mirroring body language. All of those things have to be taught. We cannot assume that they're taught outside of our arena. Those things have to be taught. So it's not just I'm having an opportunity to share what I think. It is that guided, productive communication that will allow me to elevate myself beyond my current situation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that clarification. And while others are gathering their questions, and I really want to hear from everybody that's within the sound of our voice, and that's part of this presentation, because she just has invoked such thought, such critical thought on my part. And so I really, really want whoever else is here to chime on in. And if you like, it's all right to come off of mute and kind of share. It doesn't necessarily have to be a question, a comment. Where does all of this fit in your trajectory? There's a reason why you all came to this particular presentation. So how does this align with your own work? And most importantly, what are some of the things that you're going to be taking away from this and incorporating and injecting into your own work? And so again, one of the things that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I raised my hand, so I didn't want to interrupt, but
that's okay, go ahead.
Thank you so much. My name is Bernetta Mosley, and I just want to thank you, Dr. Prather, just for a phenomenal presentation. I joined a few minutes late, so I didn't catch the first probably about 10 minutes. I want to ask you to repeat something, but I have comments and questions. So I'm a writing coach and an editor, and I work a lot with graduate students. And I also do a lot of workplace development training as well, because as you spoke to, employers are constantly saying our employers cannot write, they cannot communicate. I'm doing something for a local government agency, and the last session was on professional writing, and I had to gear it all just towards email communication. And these were professionals across the county, from highly educated, from HR to fire chiefs. It was just amazing. And so I have so much to say, so I'm trying to be concise. So one of the challenges that I see, I returned to the classroom last spring just to kind of immerse myself back into the technology. And I taught at the college level, first year writing students, or first year students. And the lack of critical thinking, the lack of just reading skills. And so at first I thought it was me, because I've been working with graduate students primarily. And I went to the first departmental meeting, and one of the faculty members just said, I used to be so proud. It's a private institution. I used to be so proud to work here. It's the caliber our students have just gone down. And another faculty member chimed in and said, well, I've just learned that I have to do a reading assessment in addition to a writing assessment. I've had to lower it down to 8th grade. And so the chair immediately chimed in. He said, look, we signed up to teach college, not high school. And so my question to you is, as the students are coming into college, if they're already lacking those skills, how do you try to quickly develop that critical thinking when they're so accustomed to just Siri, tell me this, Alexa, do this?
Yes.
And so they just want you as the faculty member just to tell them. And then you're just trying to, as you said, well, what do you think? So I can try to even process your thinking. So that's one question. And the second question is, how do you recommend that faculty learn the AI? Because they are very resistant. And so even as someone who wants to be innovative and getting in there just to try to teach, things are moving so quickly, you're trying to learn the technology. So how do you even learn it to be able to guide students into teaching it independently if there's not that professional development provided for educators?
I'm going to start with the educators, because I do want to, I want to start with the educators. I work with adults all the time, and the same thing is true in public K-12 public education, where you have the adults who don't understand the technology. But the other factor that comes into play is the speed of change. And so if I were recommending to my colleagues, my friends, on where do I start with AI, it would be taking that step back and learning Chat GPT, just a basic overview. And you have my email me, I will provide you with some resources. they have to understand what the capacity of it is and what it can actually do before they can even pick up on it to see whether or not they're getting authentic work from students. And then two, how to direct students to use it. I've been doing a lot of work with principals on helping them understand just what you're talking about. Because what you also have is so we have our teachers here, our administrators here, and there's no understanding here. So when this group starts sounding the alarm, there's a lack of understanding here. So it really has to be a full-fledged approach to understanding that. And for me, what I would say to you is if you had your colleagues attend a webinar that is simply on AI and instruction. And so what I do is I teach them, how do you use AI with best practices for instruction? And then how do you then lead students to understand what is acceptable use and non-acceptable use? At higher ed, you have Turnitin. Well, that doesn't work with AI generated content because it's not plagiarized. It's all unique content. So you can't use those same structures that you've used in the past where I'm gonna run this paper through Turnitin and it comes back and it's 28% plagiarized. It won't come back plagiarized, but there are some key markers when work has been produced by AI, and it's the repetitive feel, and it's also because it lacks soul. And so I've come up with a checklist so to help teachers identify AI generated work, and we always catch it. But again, that is me with those early adapters who want to step out there and step into this. But everyone has to learn these principles. As far as students coming in, you have to put the cognitive demand. And I know that educators want students to be successful. And they want to feel like, well, I'm doing this, I put all of this work in, I want to see that outcome, that, and I call it the razzle dazzle. I want to see the A's, I want to see the B's. Well, if you are creating work just to see A's and B's, then you're going to get diminishing returns because they're not doing the work. Place the cognitive demand. Ensure that they follow through. If the grade trends down to a C, say this is how you can get it to this level. And they are coming in on lower reading levels. And I can speak to this because what has happened is you have teachers who are now playing the content. They're listening to the story. So they're working on auditory comprehension, but not reading comprehension. And so then when you have the whole science of reading, where we have that word recognition and language comprehension equals reading comprehension, well, if I am dependent upon a program or a platform to read the story, read the questions, read the answer choices, then you get lazy readers. And that's simply what I call them. They're lazy readers, that cognitive demand, that increase in reading stamina. And so what I've done with my principals, I've said, okay, by the grade level, this is the stamina, this is the number of words your students should be reading within a delineated time frame. Because if you don't increase the stamina, the length of the passages, the rigor of the passages, then you tend to get a reader that will stop between 5th and 8th grade level, which is what you are seeing in higher ed. I teach at the University of West Georgia. I work with their College of Ed program to come in and have workshops and talk to students. And the same thing is true. But you have to get to that place where you will have the cognitive demand placed upon you. Here's some scaffold and supports, but the thinking has to be done by you. And as far as increasing that reading ability, it's going to come with increasing that reading stamina, but also with the advent of AI, I can scan a page in my book and have it read aloud to me. And so it's, again, how are we working around all of these functionalities? And I know it seems out of place to have students read in a college class in front of you, but if you want to increase their reading stamina and you don't want them scanning the page and listening to it, which is what they're accustomed to doing, then you're going to have to occupy some of your class time and actually force those skills upon students, engage them in that cognitive dissonance, so to speak. So they're like, whoa, this is so different. And what the brain says once it goes through cognitive dissonance, this is novel, this is unique, I need to pay attention to this.
Right. So just two quick follow-up questions I could. How would you recommend to get students to value critical thinking and some of those things when they will say things like, well, I will never write an email again. I'll just put in the chat GPT, or I don't ever have to do a summary. How do you get them to even value, like you want them to embrace the technology because it's here and to use it as a tool and a resource without becoming dependent on it, but how do you get them to even value the skills?
You give them the duality of experiences. And I know it seems odd, but and I've done this with college. I just had a cell phone basket. Okay, we're engaging in a new opportunity. I need your cell phones in the basket. And what I say is, you give me 60, I'll give you 10, because they are literally, their brains are addicted to the technology. Give me 60, I'll give you 10. So you work hard for me for 60 minutes, I'm gonna give you 10 minutes. You can Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, whatever you want to do. You can even do it in here with me. You want to teach me a dance? I'll do it with you. Okay, but you're gonna give me my 60, then I'm gonna give you your 10. And you physically make them write it. Physically close the lid. I know it makes some people uncomfortable, but I'm a Google trainer. I have a master's in instructional technology. I love technology, but technology is a tool and a resource. It should not then become our whole way of life, because the byproduct of that are the students that you have in your classroom. And that's why I say, close the lid. The basket stay in front of them so they don't have to worry about, oh, somebody's gonna take my cell phone. It's in the basket. And you physically have them write. My oldest daughter is 22. She graduated from college. She graduated early. And she came to me as a very intelligent person and said, how do I address an envelope and how do I write a check? And so there are tactile experiences that we've pulled away from children because we've put them on devices with programs and on platforms. And so again, going back to, you can still make jelly. I can make jelly the old school way, which means I can write it out, paper and pen, or I can do it the new school way with technology, which is my electronic cannon. You can still make jelly, and it's helping them see that.
Wonderful. And then last question, could you quickly address, and I want to make sure also I did go to your link. Is this the presentation titled Creating a Firm Foundation on Shifting Sand?
Yes.
Okay, great. Could you quickly address digital, biological, and physical, those three emerging trends?
Yes. So with the physical biology, what you are looking at is the advent of robotics, and you're looking at things like using anatomized tables. How are you incorporating the metaverse? So how do you have a physical device, okay, a physical device that you are using to produce a fourth industrial revolution outcome? So for instance, a 3D printer. Lots of schools bought 3D printers, but they're not connected to the curriculum. It's, oh, I can go over there and I can make an ashtray. Oh, I can go over there and make a teddy bear. To what end? To what purpose? And so again, with that physical aspect is, how do you use advanced robotics where I'm in control of it? I am the driver of it. So then I don't end up working for it. When we go to digital, what you're looking at is the Internet of Things, the interconnectivity that happens in the world. So for instance, I use the example of, with my cell phone, I can control the heat, the temperature of my house. I can set my alarm. I can talk to a delivery driver through my Ring camera. All of those types of things. The Internet of Things is how things are actually connected through the internet. And so then you get into cloud computing and devices. And then blockchain. And blockchain is ensuring that our students know that once you place something on the internet, there's transparency and it lives forever. So how can I capitalize on that? And one field is logistics. And so oftentimes we don't talk to students about going into logistics. I have a cousin, he played in the NFL for a little while, but he got his degree before he went. And so now what he is doing is he runs logistics for UPS. He makes $250,000 a year, and he literally tracks packages, and that is all blockchain. That is understanding how supply demand works, because now we have the ability to do it real time. No one's calling up an operator anymore looking for their packages. No one's calling up to check delivery or time of arrival. All of those things are done through blockchain and logistics. And then biological is the one that I see least done in school. I see the least amount of work, and that is how are we using technology to actually improve quality of life. And I talked about the example from the National Library of Medicine with nanotechnology. They have now developed nanotechnology. And if you've ever seen G.I. Joe, the remake of G.I. Joe, and these small mechanical circuitry devices that have the ability to govern cells, okay? And also data is a huge one too. Think about your Apple Watch. Your Apple Watch keeps data on your heart rate. I mean, it now has the capacity that if there is like a misalignment of signals, it will cue and call emergency response for you. So that gathering of data from something as simple as your Apple Watch. And so this biological is gathering and storing all of this information. Well, kids wear the watch. Do they understand the concept behind the watch? They understand the positive and also the potential negative consequences of this incessant data collection. And if so, what are some other ways that we can collect data that will be useful and beneficial to others in the world? So those are your three big mega trends: physical, digital, and biological. And by giving them opportunities and experiences, even engaging in conversations like this, or saying, here's an Apple Watch, here's the current features and functionalities. Okay, this group, tell me all the positives, create a world based upon all the positive implications of the Apple Watch. This group, I want you to create a world about all the potential downfalls of all this data collection from this Apple Watch. That is how you use rigor in the classroom to get them talking, and it's relevant to them.
Dr. Prather, I just want to say that we've come to the end. This has just been so phenomenal. You know, I could go for another hour because this conversation is so enriching, but we are at the 12 o'clock hour. So again, we want to give you a resounding, thunderous applause for such a phenomenal workshop. And just a point of information, I will be doing our final workshop at 2:00 p.m. Eastern Time, entitled Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Implications for Higher Education. And I tell you, I want you to get ready for a phenomenal presentation and engagement with you all at 2:00. So I'm going to take a little break and regroup because that was a lot for us to take in, but it absolutely was very, very insightful. So with that, I'm going to say thanks everyone for attending, and we will see you all at 2:00 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, also, please remember to complete the evaluation form. The link is in the chat.
Great. And thank you, Dr. Newman, for your behind the scenes work. So we appreciate
Absolutely.
That.
I'm looking forward to your presentation as well.
Okay, well, I'm going to log out. And again, thank you everybody for attending. And again, Dr. Prather, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye-bye.